Um, did you hear about Sam Raimi saying he would love to direct a Batman film? He said, and I quote, "I've always loved Batman. If I ever saw the bat signal up in the air, I'd come running. If I heard that deep, gurgling laugh of the shadow coming from the darkness, I would also tentatively step outside." What do you think about Sam Raimi directing a Batman film in the future?
Um, I feel like he'd do a better job with a Bat Family show, but not about like a Bat or not Bat Family movie, but not about like the entire Bat family, specifically with the darker characters. Like give me Batman, Batwoman, Orphan, like some kind of like team up with like those three, and I could see it. I don't necessarily know that just Batman alone, or I don't really know. I haven't really given it much thought. That's just the first thing off the top of my head. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure.
Okay, because you were tentative about it, I'm gonna let you off the hook because I was about to say blasphemy, but no, you good. But people were just disrespecting Sam Raimi on Twitter, and I was dumbfounded. I was just like, do people really don't think he could make a good Batman movie? Did these people only see Spider-Man and think that those were the only movies he's ever made in his entire life? Not only that, though, that's not the part that really, because people are like, oh, Spider-Man is she is was it campy and it's bright and cheery and blah blah blah. He can't make a Batman film, and that's the inherent problem with what the live action Batman films have done to the character of Batman. Made everybody think that the only version of Batman there can be is the dark, brooding one, which me and you both know from watching tons of cartoons and
I
reading a lot of
hate.
comics. You can have the 60s Batman. You can have that. That exists. You can have Batman Brave and the Bold. You can have this goofy, and even then, here's the thing. Currently in the comics, I feel like, maybe not currently, but kind of the comics today, I feel like show off the fantastical and more eccentric and goofy side of Batman in combination with the dark, especially since he has such a large family. It's hard for him to stay this dark, brooding character all the time. And a lot of people, especially since we haven't had a Robin in a long time, and the movies where we did have Robin were so bad, people associate him with darkness so much. And it's like Batman can be like at the end of the Batman, where he's trying to become a symbol of hope and like justice instead of vengeance. Batman doesn't have to be the darkness and vengeance all the time. Like, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I was gonna say I hate how people say, "Oh, Batman's all dark and gritty and yada yada yada." He's really not. Like there are their fair share. There's a fair share, especially in like the mid 2000s, of like really dark Batman stories. But Batman is actually a pretty hopeful character, and a lot of the time has a lot of light stories or a lot
Also,
of like
and also goofy.
he can be goofy. He can be very goofy at times, and people seem to completely forget that. I'm like, you're missing out on an essential part of Batman. If Batman was all dark and broody all the time, hell, if Batman was dark and broody most of the time, it would still feel off because I wouldn't feel like Batman. Batman's not some super dark, super like broody, like he broods a lot, sure, and
Yeah.
he can be dark, but that's not all he is. It's not even
All
most
it
of what he
is.
is.
And I feel like hopefully they give us Robin in the next movie. Essentially since it would be his third year, and that would make sense. That's when he usually gets he adopts Dick. So but also like I feel like Raimi, you've seen, I believe you've seen The Evil Dead. And especially in The Evil Dead 2, which I think is probably, I don't know, I have to watch them again. It might be the better of the first two. And I feel like he mixes the horror and darkness with comedy really well in Evil Dead. Evil Dead is a really goofy horror movie. And it's also very campy, much like the Spider-Man films. And I think he could bring out that mix of goofiness and darkness and campiness in a Batman film. I feel like he could make his Batman films would be like a combination of Matt Reeves Batman and the 80 the 89 film, um with a little bit more levity, I guess, because even those films try to take themselves a little bit too seriously. But even I feel like a big part of his character is he's serious even when everything's ridiculous, and that's funny in of itself. You know what I mean? Like a character being a straight man in a inherently ridiculous situation is
Yeah, I know what you mean. He
is,
is definitely the straight
yeah,
man.
is inherently comedic in itself. So to think that Batman is never somewhat funny is and like goofy is ridiculous. But anyway, I don't want to harp on that too much because we got a lot of other stuff to talk about before we wrap up.